One of the most exciting games of this upcoming week is going to be between the NFC South division leading Atlanta Falcons and the Los Angeles Chargers coming off bye week. The Chargers currently 4-3, the Falcons currently 4-4. Atlanta, despite being at home, is the underdog. They get a +3. So that says more or less Vegas has the Chargers about a touchdown favorite when you consider they usually just give 3 points to the home team. But I kind of feel like that's not doing us good service towards this Atlanta Falcons team, but we could get into that as we talk it out more. Kyle, what are your early impressions of Chargers versus Falcons?
I'm interested to see who shows up for the Chargers this week. That's always an important part of the conversation is which Chargers are healthy and which Chargers are not, because that's kind of been the whole season for this team so far.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised to still see that Keenan Allen is questionable even coming off the bye week.
Yeah, Keenan Allen, that's clear. That's got to be a long-term injury that we're just not really hearing about. The Chargers haven't released an injury report by the time of recording yet, so we don't have a clear picture. But I know Justin Herbert's got torn rib cartilage. I know that Khalil Mack's battling injury. I know J.C. Jackson has been partially injured, partially benched at this point for the Chargers.
Well, now
so
he's
that's
completely out.
Yeah, I know. And the Chargers have just kind of been a weird, chaotic team that I think still might end up making the playoffs. The Falcons side is kind of interesting, right? The Falcons are 4-4, even though the Falcons are 4-4, where the two chaoses have kind of evened themselves out. Where they should have lost last week to the Carolina Panthers. And also, they shouldn't have blown a 16-point lead week 1 against the Saints in 8 minutes. So, both of those have now evened out to 1-1, and the Falcons are the 4-4 team that they deserve to be at this point.
And then when you factor in, of course, you had the game with the roughing the passer call against the Bucs, and then they blew out the Niners. The Falcons have had a mixed bag of results throughout the course of the season. They may get some help on the way. As of this recording, we still have Cordell Patterson on the IR, but he's close to return, so their running game may get a little bit of a boost. I think they've been able to do a decent job mixing in Algier and Huntley. But if they could get Patterson back, that would be a huge addition to this team, particularly because I think that that's where you expose the Chargers in the running game, which I think this is a great matchup for the Falcons because I think they're going to out-physical the Chargers on Sunday. For me, when I go back to our predictions of Seahawks versus Chargers before the bye week, I thought that Kenneth Walker was going to have a huge day, which he ended up doing against this soft Chargers defense. This running game for the Falcons, regardless of Patterson's back, can do the same thing. And now we start seeing Marcus Mariota have a little bit of life as this team starts to play more games. He had his biggest day of the year this past weekend, threw the 3 touchdowns, almost gave the game away at points. It's a roller coaster ride, but I think Mariota has earned his spot as the starter on this team, at least rest of the year, unless something really implodes. Obviously, I know you have been a big proponent of starting Desmond Ridder, but now the situation has changed for the Falcons in which they want to see how far they can push this team, see if they can at least make a playoff run, because now you look at Brady and the Bucs, and they're not the same Tampa Bay team that we thought they were coming into the year. So the Falcons have a legitimate chance to win their division. Sad as it would be to see Tom Brady go out on his shield and have a season in pure disappointment looking like Brett Favre of the New York Jets. If you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, this is your opportunity. You haven't been in the playoffs in a couple of years. Matt Ryan had a disappointing tail end of his career. You had the Calvin Ridley stuff in the offseason. You've seen a lot of turnover, but you have a coach in his second year in Arthur Smith who you're high on. You just haven't got to see great returns early on because the talent hasn't been there on this roster. That it would be nice to finally start to see the fruits of your labor pay off and to start getting some wins, start getting some positive momentum. Because, we look at what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Yeah, they snuck into the playoffs last year as a 7th seed, but they were able to ride that wave of momentum into the following season to eventually become a contender in the NFC. If you're the Atlanta Falcons this year, you could potentially do the same thing. Maybe you do look at better improvements at the quarterback position, but embrace what you got so far. Embrace what you're doing this year because you're starting to see the positive results. You're starting to see this team move in the right direction, which in itself is an incredible thing for this Falcons team that we thought was going to be one of the worst in the league, to be frank. Like preseason predictions, we thought this Falcons team was going to be bad, and they're not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad. They're kind of in the middle. 4-4 kind of says it all. You are what your record is. 4-4. They're about what 4-4 looks like.
The Atlanta Falcons look like they're actually building towards something. And that was the big thing that I didn't believe in the offseason, even though my friend Walter Mitchell, who I do the Red Rain podcast with, he's been a Falcons proponent for a while. And he was very big on what Atlanta was doing. And I looked at that and I'm like, when you get rid of the quarterback and don't have a replacement option for him, you just get rid of him and then say, whoops, we'll just figure it out later. Or when you have a coach who really, really wants to do the running system, but then you draft 2 receivers with your top 10 picks over the last 2 years, it looked like they weren't building towards anything. It looked like they weren't on the same page. And now I'm starting to see the vision a little bit clearer when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. Marcus Mariota has a 92 QBR this year. You know what the average QBR in the NFL is? 92. Marcus Mariota is an average NFL quarterback. And if it weren't for Geno Smith making the Pro Bowl, we'd be talking about the improvements of Marcus Mariota in a similar way to what we're talking about with Geno Smith, because Marcus Mariota has been the 17th best quarterback in the NFL this year. And the Falcons signed him to be the 25th best quarterback in the NFL this year. So value. Good job, Atlanta. You got value at the quarterback position by Mariota being slightly better than the bottom of the league quarterback you thought he was going to be. So that's pretty good. They've actually started incorporating Drake London and Kyle Pitts into the offense, which is something they just refused to do the first 4 weeks of the season. And I'm actually starting to see the vision a little bit clearer about what the Atlanta Falcons are building towards.
See, I believe there was a stat like they had twice as many rushing attempts as they actually had passes, which tells you how this offense is weighted. And I think that matches up in this particular contest against the Chargers well for them. But you mentioned getting Pitts and getting Drake London involved. Arthur Smith a couple weeks ago had a comment that put fantasy owners into a frenzy when he said, the ball will find Kyle Pitts. Well, don't you try and force things to Kyle Pitts? Don't you try and get him targets? No, the ball will find Kyle Pitts. But apparently, if you listen more of like the Atlanta media and what they've talked about, they've talked to Kyle Pitts about what his idea is for this offense and his role on this team. He actually started to embrace more the actual blocking element of being a tight end, which I know that he can be so much more than that in the receiving game. We liken him to a Travis Kelce. Some people even thought that he could be better than a Travis Kelce in terms of physical attributes and ability. But if he became a elite blocker in addition to what we think he can contribute to them in the receiving game, then suddenly we're talking about a whole different type of player. We're talking about a true hybrid. In the whole debate of Kittle versus Kelce that we've had for years, the thing that's always been used for Kittle has been, well, he does everything as a tight end. He's not what Kelce is as a pure wide receiver. If Pitts could become Kittle without the injuries, then suddenly we are talking about a true Hall of Famer. Obviously, we'd like to see him get more work in the receiving game, but maybe Arthur Smith is right. You talk about the vision coming together, that the targets will come. Just let it play out a little bit more and the targets will come. It's just a low volume passing offense. I don't see any reason for that to change. They found something that works, and it's not the prettiest version of it working, but you look at another team like the New York Giants, right? Not the prettiest thing, but it gets results, and it's a results-based league. So sometimes you just got to stick with what works, right? The old phrase, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it's working for the Falcons. The Falcons are ranked 9th in the NFL in DVOA on offense. Like the Falcons are a pretty good offensive team. They're a pretty good scoring offense. It's not perfect. Like they're still going to put up 14 against Tampa, who's a really good defense, or they're going to put up 17 against the Bengals because the Bengals are a decent. Well, I guess the Bengals just forced a bunch of turnovers.
But maybe they put up 30 against the Niners team that we were high on early in the season, right? So knowing that that's in the bag. And that was, again, one of Marcus Mariota's best days. I think he was, 11 of 11 to start that game, had the rushing attempts. So when we start seeing Mariota do stuff with his legs, and we think about what Mariota was as a prospect, that's what ideally Mariota is when he's playing his best football. And it's nice to see that he still has that in his bag. It's just, will this offense cater to that more to try and make them a little bit more dynamic as they face tougher competition? And like I said, they're going to try and make a run to at least win this division, take advantage of Tampa having a down year. And this is a very winnable game for them in facing the Chargers.
There is one key thing for the Falcons at this point that we haven't really talked about, which is, for about 4 or 5 years, I've been making the same joke that the Atlanta Falcons have basically decided across multiple general managers and multiple head coaches, if we just never address our defense, eventually it will fix itself. For the 5th consecutive season, the Falcons defense is fucking trash. Like, it is really bad. And Keenan Allen playing would change the math because obviously he's going to be shadowed by AJ Terrell. And AJ Terrell is the only first-round pick they've spent on defense. And lo and behold, he's actually really good. When you actually draft defensive players, they're actually pretty good.
AJ Terrell still questionable. Mike Williams, though, also might miss this game. So it's kind of two opposing things of injuries going against each other, in the sense the Falcons have a banged up secondary, while the Chargers have a banged up wide receiving core.
Yeah, that's the thing that plays into this. I don't know who's going to be on the field for the Chargers. If it's like Donald Parham catching passes from Justin Herbert, maybe that changes the math.
Joshua Palmer, according to Austin Eckler this week, is the play. I don't believe it because Palmer hasn't been really playing that well either. So I don't know. You know what I think is another difference for me, and I've been hammering this point all season long? Brandon Staley sucks. Get him out of there. If you're a Chargers fan, you're wasting your time with Brandon Staley, and I think everyone knows it. When you hire a defensive-minded head coach and your defense is awful, that's a big red flag in itself. The coaching matchup, again, is unequal. While it's not as unequal as it was a couple weeks ago when Pete Carroll went against Brandon Staley, I think Arthur Smith is just a better coach, and I think that we're going to see that.
That's tough. I don't know. Like, there's been so many injuries that I find it hard to evaluate the Chargers this year, but I'm with you. It's not like
we talked about gain more with less. I think Arthur Smith is a more with less head coach, and I think Brandon Staley has shown that he's a less with more type head coach.
I don't have any evidence on either of them, I feel like, but the fact that I don't have evidence on either of them suggests that they haven't jumped off the page. I still feel like I don't have evidence to say if they're good or bad, but
it's a spreadsheet's worth of evidence.
But I don't think Arthur Smith is a good coach. I don't think Arthur Smith is a bad coach. I just think he's a coach. And I think the fact that I'm in that purgatory with both of them suggests that they are replaceable. Like, they're not the coaches that are irreplaceable, like the 10 that we all think of as being great. So
what would make Arthur Smith a difference maker is if he had a quarterback. I feel as though if you gave him Justin Herbert, if you just flip the rosters, like if you put Arthur Smith in Los Angeles and you put Brandon Staley in Atlanta, we would really see the differences in their coaching styles and what they are. And I feel as though Brandon Staley is the type of head coach that, well, I mean, hell, you've hammered on Dean Spanos for years, right? And his cheapness. Brandon Staley is just another example of Dean Spanos being cheap.
Yeah, it's probably a good way to think of it. That's why Sean Payton's never going to the Chargers. They'll never spend the money to get that type of coach. I mean, all the evidence suggests this is going to be a Falcons chaos game. And what is a Falcons chaos game? It is your quarterback's going to throw 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. You're going to score 30 points. The other team's going to score 30 points, and it's kind of a coin toss. So all the evidence suggests that's going to be the case, which means it's probably going to be like 17-14 because football's stupid. And that's kind of what's happened this year. I'm just going to take the probabilities on this one and go Chargers. Chargers are 3-point favorites. Money's about 50-50 on both sides right now, so it's kind of a stay away game, Vegas is saying, but I'm just going to play probabilities and take the Chargers on this one.
I think the probabilities of Brandon Staley failing on a Sunday is extremely high. That's why I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons. I think that the Falcons are going to pound the Chargers in the running game, which I think plays exactly into their style. It's going to keep Justin Herbert on the sideline, and it's going to limit what the Chargers are able to do offensively, and we know they're bad defensively. Again, Atlanta, rise up. I got you winning this one. I got you advancing to 5-4. But anyway, guys, let us know in the comment section. Are you taking the Falcons? Are you taking the Chargers? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on social media. All our links in the bio. From Kyle Ledbetter and Juju, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.